Good morning, Doug.
Hey, good morning, Keith.
It's another beautiful day in Carmel, Indiana.
Yeah, it is. Still summertime, everybody. Even though school's in session, don't forget it's still summertime.
What'd you call the gnats?
What jet skis.
I know are they water gnats? What are they?
Yeah, I call them water gnats just because they buzz around and just disturb everybody. But if you're on one, it's the best thing in the world. My friend Nick says you never see a sad kid riding a jet ski.
I mean, the cool kids ride them, don't they? I mean, it's kind of a
It sounds great.
yeah, probably like a dirt bike or something in the
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
So, so have you got one of those Nigerian prince letters in your email lately, wanting you um to send, to absorb their money for them, so you
So I
can help
haven't
them out?
gotten any Nigerian Prince letters, but I did get a sign up for a Medicaid phone call yesterday.
Medicaid?
Yeah. And
Okay.
so our Medicare, I can't remember,
Well,
probably Medicare.
okay.
Do you have your Medicare card? And so I always like to give them my name as like a world leader or something like that, like, oh
That's
yeah,
how
this is Hugo Chavez. Send it to me.
that's out of Charlie Ward's playbook. Charlie Ward signs himself William Jefferson Clinton and stuff. So yeah, yeah, that's good. Well, we are big fans of the Fishers Police. They've just been a part of Gimbal for many years. Had a plaque out there in the office that we were showing off yesterday with several of the Fishers police officers, and we're just blessed to have Dean Mucha join us today to offer some feedback so you don't get sucked into things like the Nigerian prince. And I think I just closed out the one I wanted to show you, but we here it is. We put this in the Gimbal anchor last month or this month, and we said call first. Let the buyer beware that the scam is on you, and that sounds really mean and cold-hearted to say that the scam is on you, but we've just seen a lot of scams in the last 5 or 10 years that have hit our friends and clients. And so we thought we'd have a conversation with Dean a little bit about that and come up with some ideas how we can help you all. Dean, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, life's good, Dean. Dean, what are you seeing out there?
There is a wide range of criminal activity targeting particular seniors, involving financial fraud schemes. Like you mentioned, the Nigerian prince is always the big one. Hey, I need some help getting some money uh, back into the United States. I don't want to pay the taxes. That's always a big one. However, what we're seeing a lot right now is just a general uh, phishing schemes, email phishing schemes, where they're asking for bank account information. You might see that you get an email from Chase Bank or Regions Bank or PNC Bank saying, hey, we need to reset your password. And if you just log into this link right down here, we can reset your password. And it takes you to a malicious website where it asks you to enter all your current information. That is not actually a legitimate website for that banking institution. It is a malicious website where it is tracking your username, your login information, and sometimes even your security questions. It might ask you, what's your security question? Uh, and it will track that. Then that person that takes that gets that information does one of two things. They'll use it themselves to get into your bank account, or they can even sell that information on the black market, which is a huge moneymaker for them. So once that information's out on the black market, that they're making the money off of your information, it's being sold to multiple people. It's not just one person who buys that. So it makes it harder for us to investigate where that money that was stolen from the victim, where it actually went, because there's multiple parties involved. they hide it pretty well.
So,
One,
hey, Dean, let's say that I just had a brain fart and I clicked that and I found myself 3 questions into it. What do I do at that moment?
I would immediately close that. I always like to say, here's the good rule of thumb. I get these all the time in my personal email account. I get them from banking institutions that I have no financial relationship with. So if you think of the biggest banks, Chase Bank, PNC, Regions, Huntington, all those banks, they have huge customer base. So if you just send out, just say a number of 1,000 of those emails, the likelihood of you getting a large percent of actual legitimate customers at Chase Bank, for instance, is pretty high. So if you have even half of those people, that's 500 people that are giving up their information. Now, that's on a much smaller scale because this operation is actually operating at a much larger scale. We're talking 100,000, 200,000 emails a day probably going out. So the percentage of people that actually have those legitimate relationships with those financial institutions are actually falling for it. And once your information is out there, it's hard to get it back. If you do, I know you asked if you find yourself in one of those situations where you've done that and clicked on it, like I said, X out of that program immediately. Contact your banking institution and let them know that you may have been compromised. Your account may have been compromised. You will want to change your username as well as your password to those accounts. Username, it's pretty easy to change it. You can do it online, or if not, your banking institution can help you.
Now, in this article that we sent out this month, we mentioned, I think it was a conversation I had with you that people, you're seeing people as young as 55 get kind of hooked into these phishing things. In the past, we had seen it probably people in their 70s. So the criminals are becoming more savvy in the way that they are coming at people, I'm guessing.
Absolutely. And I think part of that is the use of technology. I think now that, people's in their 40s, I even seen it as low as 20 something, 20 something, 30. There's no age discrimination on these types of schemes. I'll just say that, just because I think as a society, we've become so dependent on technology that we trust it too much. And if we get something, whether it's a text message saying, I know the big one is text messages saying that UPS or the United States Postal Service has a package for you. You got to click on the link. That's the same type of thing as the phishing emails. It's just a phishing text scam, and they just want your information. So there
my wife came up with her phone 2 days ago with that one. I'm like, yeah, that is a scam.
Yeah, it is. It's hey, your package needs to be accepted. We need some information for it to be delivered. And all they're looking for is credit card numbers, personal identification, something that they can use and use in a malicious way to take advantage of you and make you a victim.
What about like my phone is blown up 2 or 3 times a day and it'll say scam on there. If I happen to pick it up and there's nobody there, are they getting something from me, or why are those scam artists calling me and not talking?
Yeah, potentially. So what they do is, like I said, going back to the technology, the use of AI and voice duplication, taking your voice, it is just amazing at what the technology out there today can do. They want you to say at least a couple words. It doesn't take much to get a sound bit of your voice and duplicate whatever you want to say. So if you do get one of those phone calls and there's no one on the other end, immediately hang up. Sometimes they'll say, "Hey, can you hear me?" They'll ask that question a couple times and you're like, "Yes, yes, hello, hello." And they're getting that information. They're recording that information, making it into an AI recording, which might have your passwords. They may have your passwords. There's some banking institutions that use voice recognition on their automatic calling systems. So they can match up your voice to what your legitimate voice would be. So they are calling into those banking institutions and changing passwords, withdrawing money, authorizing wire transfers, using your voice that they manipulated from that 3 or 4 second phone call that you picked up, and you said, hello, hello, can you hear me? And you said, yes. So they are taking that and expanding that to make it advantage them, not us.
So in this article we just sent out to our clients, one of the suggestions I offered was that they have multi-generational conversations about this thing. Because what I gather is there's a certain humiliation that happens when you get scammed. And so by having the families talk about it, it seems like it'd also be healthy to call your kids if you get scammed, or call somebody that is a sound mind when you've been scammed, to help you kind of come down from that embarrassment to begin responding to it in a more proactive manner at that point. But I don't know how, it seems like isolation is part of how these scams work.
Yes, that's exactly right. They want to keep you isolated. And they, for instance, I don't know if I shared with you, but my father was a victim of a scam. It's called the grandparent scam, where their grandson calls in and says, "Hey, I've been in an accident. I've been locked up in jail. I'm in Chicago. I need some money for an attorney. Can you wire some money? But don't tell anyone. You can't tell anyone about this. Don't tell my dad. Don't tell anybody else." So they do want to keep that isolation. That's a big key point in the whole manipulation to deceive that person.
Is that how these, like recently we had a client that got scammed on a dating scam. Is that part of how the dating scams work too?
Yeah, so the dating scams are very similar. They it's hard, especially for older folks that may meet, particularly, going back to the technology, they meet online. They may have developed this relationship with someone they have never met yet, and they are generally overseas or out of the country or a long distance away, and that is to keep that person guessing of who they are. They might send a picture, but that picture is not legitimate. Um, they might give some backstory, but that backstory is never accurate or true. But they'll restart requesting money. They start with smaller requests first, just to test that person out. It might be, hey, I need some groceries. Can you send me $15-20? Although $15-20 groceries is not going to get you much today, but it does start you with a smaller amount, and then they gradually work up um, to larger amounts. And I've had cases where $500,000 or more than $500,000 was given away in these types of scams. And unfortunately, I can't get their money back. That's the hardest part, is you try to do as much as you can, but unfortunately that money's gone, and it's hard to say where it went.
I think what kind of led me to an introduction to you, Dean, was I was talking with Angela about it, and she pointed out that Angela's another Fisher's police officer. She pointed out that some scams are not even criminal activity, that because the adult said, yes, here you go, you can have this, which kind of blew my mind. I couldn't imagine that, but
Yeah.
how does that work?
So, and that's the building up the trust of the suspect, building up the trust of the victim. And if someone is willingly giving up money to someone, it is a hard case to prove that there is an actual theft. Now, there might be some other statutes that we might be able to get in, but everyone just thinks it's a theft, and they're stealing from the person. But it does make our job a little bit more complicated to prove that case. But and it also depends on your banking institution. Sometimes banking institutions will say, hey, you did that willingly, we're not going to refund your money. There are some banking institutions that will refund your money.
I guess that was my next question. I was going to ask you, if there's 100 people that got scammed, is there much chance, like, will 5 of those people get any of that money back, or what's the likelihood of getting any of that back?
And like I said, it just depends on your bank. Some are better than others. If you remember a couple of years ago, Western Union had to provide relief funds to people who were wiring money because they did not do their due diligence in verifying that the money was actually being wired with the realms of validity and accuracy, that the person was not being deceived. So there was a small window of time that they had to file that claim, but that there are banking institutions where they had gotten in trouble because they didn't do their due diligence, and now they've got to do some other stuff to make up for that. But like I said, the banks are the ones who are usually the ones who are the first offense on catching this. And it's hard.
You've really been helpful with this. Like, so like disconnecting, if you're doing this thing online, notify your financial institution, change your password, change your user ID. Anything else in closing you would suggest they might, this is how we respond to this situation?
And I think you brought up a very good point. The disconnect, get your family involved. They're not going to think anything less of you. Don't be embarrassed. It happens to the best of us, even, just thinking, staying up late and you buy the amazing rags that will wipe your whole car clean, for $19.99. It happens to the best of us. It's not something to be embarrassed about. They can help you. Get your local law enforcement involved. If they can't help you, they can point you in the right direction to get you where you need to be. So we're here to help, and we're always glad to help out and point you in the right direction.
Well, I sure appreciate you taking time to hang out with us this morning, and just knowing that you all are watching out for us is a real blessing for us.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the time.
All right. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, Doug. How do we get upbeat after that?
I just think it's a great word. It's so encouraging to be in touch with people who are in the know and to see it every day, and just to remind us. That was really wonderful.
I was listening to a national media person, somebody that is the national personality, and they described how their family got sucked into the grandchild in jail thing. And we've seen that one. We have friends that he's a mutual fund manager, that he was late to lunch a few years ago with me because he got sucked into it. And so it is not just, the elderly that get sucked into it, but I think avoiding isolation is a big deal. Is let somebody know. One of them, we had a client that sent out, I think, $17,000 in cash via the FedEx, and she was elderly, but she had the presence of mind after she did it to call her son-in-law. I think she thought, well, he's the most gentle, I'll call him. He called FedEx and they redirected the envelope to the Miami police. The Miami police then took it, processed it, and it got back to her a few weeks later. But like, the quicker you can do something, the higher the likelihood, I think, of getting your money back.
I think for me, what I'll start doing is just not saying anything. When I get a phone call,
Yeah.
and 5 seconds go by and nobody says hello, I don't say, hi, this is Doug, like I normally do.
Right.
I'll just wait and then hang up.
That's pretty squirrely, isn't it?
Yeah, with the AI, and it's pretty smart.
Yeah. Well, we are here to help. We use a little tagline, call first. And if you guys will call first, if there is a scam going on, we probably have a good idea of it here. Everybody in the office is probably, we have conversations about these things. So don't click on something on your screen just because something pops up and starts flashing at you. Don't necessarily pick up the scam calls.
If you get an email that says from Fidelity,
Yeah, don't
Yeah.
trust it. Call us.
call us.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, because you will get some. I get communications from Fidelity, but generally I don't click on anything on those unless I'm checking with everybody here to make sure it's something I need to be doing. So that's a big deal. It's heartbreaking when somebody gets scammed because Dean didn't say what percentage. My guess is very few people get their money back.
right.
Yeah, and so anything we can do to help you and your family from getting caught up in that, we're here for you. Doug, the Japanese market was the place to be invested for the 1980s.
I'm sure it was.
It was a if you all don't have anything to do this weekend, Gung Ho. Have you seen that movie?
No.
Yeah, it was a good movie. It was a 1980s movie, but it was the mindset of the 1980s. It was that corporate America was bringing in these consultants that were offering Japanese management styles to leaders in America because we didn't know how to lead, and they were selling memberships to country clubs for a ridiculous amount of money. You had to go, before you could go golfing in Japan back then, you had to hit 10,000 balls at a driving range. And I think if you hit a hole in one, it ended up costing you like $10,000 because you had to buy all the stuff at the golf club. And so Japan was just going crazy through all of that. And that was in the 1980s, and I was trying to find a chart here of Japan's market, and I'll find that. But that's what we woke up to this week, right? Was the Japanese market.
Yeah, and what's been just really encouraging for me is all the stock market news, the Yahoo Finance, all that stuff, the news, the things to read. Japanese, they really controlled the stock market news this past week. But when I've listened to a couple of our friends who've been helping teach us and encourage us with watching the stock market, they didn't talk about the Japanese stock market at all. What they talked about was just the supply and demand of different stocks, of different indices, and the S&P and the NASDAQ. And the bottom line is there was more sellers than buyers on Monday. And then as we've gone throughout the week, there have been more buyers than sellers. And so we're just constantly looking at the supply and the demand of the stock market. And that really has blown my way, or my view this week. Like, if you look at the NASDAQ and you compare it to last week, last Friday, and compare it to today, we're not down that far.
No, it's been specific, I think, to individual stocks. There are stocks. Well, let's just look at one. This one happened while I was on vacation. Share my screen real quick. Remember it wasn't that long ago, was it 3 weeks ago when there was disruption in air travel and CrowdStrike was behind it. Their stock was trading at nearly $400 a share, and on, is that Monday? I can't see the date there. It hit a low of 200. So in a month it dropped in half. And there's a number of other stocks that have had that, but the indices have held up relatively well.
Yeah, no, I've been really encouraged by it. And I still think that what we're seeing is just sell-offs, interest rates, concerns, jobs, political things. And so people are getting worked up mainly just because of the hopes of things getting better over the next year. But yeah, I think by and large, things have been pretty good. And the money markets are still paying pretty good yields. And so they favor the saver right now. I think really things look pretty good.
I was trying to get our friends a chart of the Nikkei here just to point out some stuff, but my chart is not cooperating with me.
And so what I understand was there was, you could borrow money in Japan pretty easily. There were lower rates, and so you could borrow money, and then you could take that money and buy Nvidia or Netflix or Google or treasuries, or you could buy something and try and make some more money. And then the yen took off, and folks are selling their tech stocks or their top stocks, and they're selling those because they have to pay off the money that they had borrowed. And so that's what I understand was the trigger on Monday.
Yeah, so this is what I wanted y'all to see. And part of not to boast, but just to say what we are doing on your behalf. This is the 1980s market I was telling you about. It went from 10,000 to 40,000 in 5 years. And I don't know what the current value is. It was at 35, I think, 35,000 is the current value. But this thing went from 1990 until recently without touching new highs. And we have consistently said that it makes sense to manage your resources, and buy and hold may or may not work. It did not work for the Japanese people. Yeah, that's 2 generations where their stock market has not been a profitable thing. We never know. The US market had a long span in the 60s and 70s where it wasn't a profitable thing. So starting from a point of understanding risk, not that we're pessimistic, but starting with the risk of your capital, first of all, before we have these grandiose ideas that you're going to make tons of money, is kind of that's the start line for the race of investing with us.
We had a client ask us this week, hey, what are you doing to help me stay a little more conservative today? And really it starts with a belief that you just don't have to be all in all the time. And so our worldview is we like to see prices move above a 200-day moving average. And so that's a fundamental view that we look at is, are things looking above the 200-day moving average? If so, we like to be a part of that.
And really, so far, none of the major indices are below it, right? That's where we've seen sectors that are below their 200-day moving average. And we want to stay invested in the main core sections as long as we can stay above that 200-day moving average. And so far, it doesn't appear that that's a problem. Normally, when you have a disruption to the market like we had this week, it doesn't fix itself inside the week. It'll take several days for the market to settle out. You have higher volatility. You're going to have bigger swings from day to day. I think if you had been watching us in the weeks past, we'd put this. We shared this graph with y'all, and we're not. I'm not patting us on the back because we were saying this, but I think all through the summer so far, we were just pointing out that this volatility is really, really low, and it probably needs to kind of go up before long. Not that we wanted to do that, but when it shot up Monday, it didn't just shoot up to 30, it shot all the way to 60. And if we look at that in a weekly period, you see we have to go all the way back to the COVID since we saw the volatility spike as ridiculously as it did on Monday.
That type of movement might create some opportunity for you in the future.
Yeah. Well, we didn't cover the markets a whole lot today, Doug. Anything else that you want to say before we bid our friends good weekend and farewell?
Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for paying attention, and thanks for lining up and thinking what you think about the chances of some theft you've seen? Some of out of control issues?
Well, I would trust you. Feel free to call us first, and if you got questions on any of these ideas, we can sure encourage you. And we'll probably be talking about it more frequently than in the past, just because of the frequency of those situations happening to people. Hey, you guys have a great weekend. The Olympics will be over by Sunday, so enjoy the rest of the Olympics and just enjoy the great weather out there.